time, won't take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth. You and I as one will always be better than.
Welcome to Relaxed and Free, a clinically minded, biblically based counseling podcast. I'm your host, Cary Corley, here with my good friend, Doug Bonebrake.
Hey.
And my good friend, Francis O'Donnell.
Hello, and how are you all doing tonight?
Oh, so great.
So good seeing you guys
Great to see
again.
your smiling face.
Yes, good. Francis, I was kind of hoping you would say what you said while we were like running through practice.
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever,
Hey, friends. First-time caller, long-time listener. How about the rest of y'all? I hope you're all listening to this podcast.
I love that so much. I think it's so funny. Okay. Anyway. Hey, so tonight, or well, whenever you're listening to this, we are going to be talking about dysfunctional families. So everyone say the biggest thing that you hate about your parents right now. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, wow. That caught me off.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That was my goal.
Yeah.
Catch you off guard.
Yeah.
Catch Doug off guard.
You got me. I'm leaving.
Yeah. No, in all reality, though, right now at Lakewood, we're doing a series on dysfunctional family and creating healthy boundaries with dysfunctional families and family members. So that means parents, spouses, children, any person that you would find in a family.
Whoever you consider is your family?
Yeah, that would work too.
Okay.
Yeah. So that being said, Doug, so maybe I don't want to start with Doug. I hope this is not a gear grinding moment.
No.
Here we go.
Well, so with Francis now joining us for at least this episode, if you don't make a mistake.
Oh, wow. That sounds very dysfunctional.
Yeah. What kind of family is this?
No.
It's the emotionally
I don't
cold
have any
family.
grace
Yeah.
in my
No grace for you.
Yeah. We are the three amigos. No, we're not. We are, sorry, Doug's giving me
You're
a
good.
serious look.
I'm
We
just
are
waiting for you. You
a
were about to ask
scientist.
a question. That
He
was
was
a
about
minute
to get
ago.
to the point.
Yeah.
We're a scientist, a pastor, and a counselor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nailed
I
it.
like that.
Okay.
All right. That's all I got.
Well,
To say
that's
about
the end of
that.
the episode. Thanks for joining.
Well, hey, all right.
Yeah.
It's a cliffhanger.
It is.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. So, what about
movie.
dysfunctional families? Where did you want to go with that?
Let's start with parents. Let's start with unhealthy parents.
Okay.
So we'll go right back to everyone name the worst characteristic of their parent.
You're not really going to interview us.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah.
Doug just got really scared.
Well, I mean, that's an entirely different thing. That's my
Because
parents.
aren't your parents the only one listening to this podcast?
I don't think they even know about the podcast, to be honest with you.
Doug, you haven't told your family about us?
I mean, I mentioned that I'm on a podcast, but I don't shove it down their throats. No.
Oh.
They're not podcast people. They're still on AOL. Come on. Yeah. So this isn't about our parents. This is about just dysfunctional families. And
Yes,
stuff, right? In
dysfunctional
general?
families.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
in general.
Right.
So, a little pop there.
Yeah. You're good.
Okay. Just wrote a blog about this. And I want the blog to just kind of be a starting point for conversation. I don't want to rehash the blog on the podcast because in my mind, podcast can go deeper into it, right?
Sure.
So one of the things that's mentioned on the blog is that pretty much everybody has some form of dysfunction in their family. Some people have more, some people have less.
Of course.
And the desire to maintain hope and have practical solutions in how to deal with a dysfunctional family member is a very real thing that typically comes around when this podcast will be dropping, which is at the holidays.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So
can we give will you give a summary, a Cliff's Notes version of what was in the blog? And then maybe we can dissect from there.
Yeah, I will. Let's see here. So, the title of the blog was Family Dysfunction Series, Unhealthy Parents. This particular blog is about unhealthy parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave 3 things to encourage and inspire hope, and then also some practical steps of how you can create healthy boundaries with unhealthy parents. The first thing is your parent trials are planned, meaning that, and you could say this about any trials really, that God has a purpose behind the trial that you're going through.
Can I stop here?
Yeah.
Can we pump the brakes?
Yeah.
I don't think I agree with that. I thought the whole notion was that God is a loving God and he isn't the one who's doing this. He uses the evil that happens to people because of the brokenness of the world. He uses that and uses it for his will, right? And turns it for his favor and our favor, but that he is not necessarily the one that's planning to have bad things happen to you. Because that would then make him a not good God, and thus
interesting. So I'm going to let the pastor handle that.
Well, I think that's a good point, Doug. But you had to go back to creation. The perfectness of creation that's where you see your first dysfunctional family, right?
Yeah.
Because Adam and Eve apparently didn't communicate very well because Eve tried to throw Adam under the bus, and then then Satan under the bus.
Yep.
But Satan needs to be thrown under the bus, and so creation itself is flawed. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah. Well,
So we live in a broken world, and in this broken world, we're going to have dysfunction because we all have a sin nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the sin nature, and we are people of faith, and so we've been saved by grace, we live by grace. So I think what Cary's getting at is there's a God can use our problems and our pain for his glory.
Right.
Because it reflects his character that God is a God of grace.
Right. But he's not the one. He's not orchestrating that.
Well, it depends on your theological bent, to be honest with you. And so,
yeah, that's interesting.
So my theological bent would be: we live in a broken, fallen world. God allows things to happen to us, but God also equips us as believers to handle those situations because He gives us His Spirit, which the Scripture talks about is a comforter and a healer and a teacher, and He gives us community. We're a community of broken, fallen people who seem to, when we listen to stories of how God helps us through our dysfunction, how He draws us together, we would call it the church or people of faith. And I think that's one of His provisions. So I would say God allows these things to happen. If you're a different theological bent, you may say that God, caused this to happen in your life. I mean,
I just haven't heard a Christian theological bend. Is that what you're calling it? Bent.
Well, because it depends on. Yeah.
Faction.
Yeah. Well,
whatever your word. I haven't heard of a Christian version of that where God is actually the one causing it. He allows it.
Yeah, I think it allows it. Yes, I think it allows it.
So I just wanted to be clear. Like, were you saying, Cary, I'm looking at you.
Yes.
Cary, were you saying that God allows that stuff, or God has planned it because He's going to cause it, right?
There's
a causation.
Yeah, this is where I love Francis on here, and because I really don't care.
It's turtles all the way down, right?
It's turtles all the way down.
All right. I think that's pretty important, right? Especially with somebody who may be struggling with faith, right? After having a dysfunctional family, growing up with all of that, like, it's important to know that. You
definitely do run into, I will say you definitely do run into the problem of evil for real. And like, that is a question that needs to be answered. However, in this moment, like, were I counseling the person, I would not encourage them to focus on solving this deep theological issue. I would encourage them to focus on finding purpose in their pain so that they could have hope. Because the best medicine in dealing with dysfunctional anything is hope. And so that's why I would divert from trying to solve a deep theological issue to Like, let's talk about hope. How can we have hope? If you don't want to call it, you can call it whatever.
I'm not trying to be nitpicky.
I'm not talking to you as much as I am.
Yeah.
You can call it whatever you want to call it, but the purpose is what's important. It's deriving a sense of purpose through your pain. And
it's
through your
after
trials.
that. Yeah. So regardless of the causation.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like the creation argument. Like, we're here now. So how much do you really want to focus on that?
Not much.
Yeah.
But that's me.
I know you don't. Yeah. I love it. But okay. So, all right. So I think that gives me the caveat. I think we're kind of saying the same thing. You're just one step past that. Okay.
Gotcha.
So
are you saying I'm one step ahead of you?
I'm saying I started at the beginning and you skipped to the middle. Which is,
well, I think that's kind of the purpose of having three different perspectives on here.
Mm-hmm.
But the key issue is,
Such a helper.
how do you find help and healing in the midst of your pain and frustration and dysfunction that you're going through?
Yeah.
Because some people don't, it depends on how you're wired. Some people aren't even asking that question. They just want to know, hey, I'm in this situation. How do I deal with it? What are the tools I need?
Yeah.
And maybe afterwards, sometimes it's too soon to go into the, God allows us or God caused this. More, let's deal with the hurt first before we get to the theological issues.
And that's probably a scenario too, where the counselor would, I would think, most likely punt them back to the pastor, because that's a theological question, not a counseling question, because now you're struggling with the nature of God and evil in the world and your faith, right?
Yeah. So as a counselor, and I would say that a counselor needs to have good answers to those questions.
Oh, okay.
I agree.
And then needs to be, so a good counselor has answered those questions, but also knows really what their client or their patient needs in that moment.
What they need to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, where they need to go.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's helpful.
Yeah. Because the problem of evil, which is a huge theological.
Right. And definitely
mass.
not the topic for today, but
true. Yeah.
So
but thanks for bringing it up.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to derail, but I mean,
Doug, you're like the
that's
American
important
government.
to me.
You're creating a problem and you're solving it at the same time.
Oh, look at me go. Elect me. Yeah. God help us all. Okay. So sorry, back on track. What was the first point again?
Your parent trials are planned, but maybe we'll move it to your parent trials are allowed.
It's fine.
Or maybe you live in a broken world, so what do you expect?
Yeah. Your parents.
Or what about this?
Your parents went through trials too.
It's okay to find purpose in your pain.
I like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Point
Okay,
number 2 in your blog. Sorry. Sorry.
Well, find purpose in your pain. So
no, that's great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're good. Point 2.
But a little sidebar here. But sometimes you don't find that purpose till much later on.
Very true.
Oh,
when you've walked through the pain.
Yes, absolutely. It is. Yeah.
That's a good caveat.
Yeah, it is a good
Thank
caveat.
you.
Yeah. That is a very good caveat, because you don't want people feeling like they're not doing it right if they're struggling to see purpose in the midst of their trial.
Right.
Yeah, which is not true. Like, it is very, very difficult to see a reason. Like, for instance, if you lost a loved one, right? Like, to sit there and say, like, hey, don't worry, brother. There's purpose in your pain here. Like, that can feel like, what's the word? Like you're dismissing.
Flippant.
Oh, you're cold.
Flippant.
It's just cold.
Yeah.
And sometimes what people need is they just need emotional responses instead of theological responses.
Amen to that. Yes.
And the theological response can come later in the teaching later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, second point is you can find joy in your trials. Huh? And I'm looking at Doug. He's smiling. I'm like, is there?
No, I'm letting you go through the high, and then the high level, the Cliff's Notes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you can find joy in your parent trials. And then last, but certainly not least, is you are allowed to rest from your parent trials. Okay. So you can find joy in your parent trials, and you are allowed to rest in your parent trials. Anything stand out to either one of you? The verse that I used was James 1, 2 through 5 in those. So, which says, I'll go ahead and read that. Brothers and sisters, consider it nothing but joy when you fall into all sorts of trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Let endurance have its perfect effect, so that you will be perfect and complete, not deficient in anything. But if anyone is deficient in wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without reprimand, and it will be given to him. It's James. James 1, 2 through 5, one of my favorite books.
Okay. Yeah, so you want to start unpacking with the first point and what you went through?
Well, I kind of thought we unpacked
The first one?
the trials and are planned.
Okay.
Like for me, being able to find purpose in that moment. So for instance, when I envision the idea or the notion that God has a plan for my life, and that plan does include trials, that gives me hope. For me personally, I don't know about for you, that gives me hope that this is all not just pointless. Like I'm not suffering for no reason. Like he has a plan in that suffering, and through that suffering, he's going to accomplish something that's amazing. That gives me hope. That gives me a peace, an inner peace, which goes to that joy. Yeah.
So, but are we talking about our trials or our parents' trials?
Well, they're going to be both.
Both and.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like, is the purpose of this to recognize like my parents also went through trials and that there was a purpose for that, and that the dysfunctionality that I may have encountered is part of the purpose of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, is that what you're getting at? I'm trying to find the connection between, because what we were just talking about is all our own personal trials and issues, but you started with parents, right?
Uh-huh.
So, what's how did you connect back, or how would you like to connect back the our parents' trials? There's a point type to us in our dysfunctional family.
Yeah, and maybe
is that just to give us grace?
So our parent trials.
What's the difference? What, as in our top level trials? Is that what you mean by parent?
Maybe. So I'll read that first step. Maybe this will jog. So this is your trials with your parent are planned. Our trials are not by mistake. They are by design. God put them in your life to give you endurance and to give you wisdom. James 1, 2 through 5 gives a solid description of this. That means your difficult parent relationships will help you in the long run, because you will be tougher and you will be wiser when all is said and done.
If you deal with them.
If you deal, what do you mean?
If you deal with those issues, you understand them and deal with them, because not everyone deals with those situations in a healthy manner, right?
Yeah, no, not everyone does deal with them in a healthy manner. Yeah. And it's very difficult. So if we, one of the things that I mentioned later on in the blog post is that everybody's dealing with and creating healthy boundaries with an unhealthy parent is a unique situation.
Yes.
Like there's not a one size fits all. Like, hey, Cary, how do I create healthy boundaries with my mom who's really unhealthy, or my dad who's really unhealthy? You know, it's dangerous to say like, oh, here's my equation for that.
Yeah,
you know,
3 easy steps.
Yeah, 3 easy steps to create healthy boundaries with your dysfunctional parent. Doesn't work. You have to take into account all the personalities, all of the things that are going on before you can really create a plan. And I've done it so much that I can say confidently, like, it really is not a one size fits all. You have to know your client, you have to know their parent, and you have to craft a plan for them. And sometimes they'll both come in, or their parents,
Are there any recurring things that pop up often or regularly?
Yeah, I'd say the issue of control is a recurring thing.
So how would you recommend, just a general rule, the 80% of
Yeah.
setting a boundary for control.
Setting a boundary for control. So, dang it, 80%.
80%.
This is
Just-
so hard. It's
Just
like,
a standard. I think I have one. If I can give you a suggestion,
okay, and then I can tell you.
and then you can tell me the right answer.
Okay, yes.
I have known a couple people with some controlling parents,
hmm
and when they finally realized that's what was happening,
Yeah.
they then set up a boundary of, if you would like to see me, right, you will do it kind of on my terms, because they were doing a thing where, it's like, I'm here for only 2 days, like, I'll be here, come and meet me. And it's all like, come to me, you're on my schedule now type thing.
Yeah.
And so the boundary ends up being, no, if you want to see me in a mutual thing, we can meet in the middle, or we can compromise on it.
That's what I call the old control with control.
Yeah. Is that what you call it?
Well, I would say
That's
that's,
what you
what
call
you're
it now.
attempting to do. Yeah.
Okay.
That can work. It depends though. So the first question I would ask, so someone comes in and says, hey, my mom or my dad's being really controlling. How do I set boundaries with them? The first question I'm going to ask is, why do you think they're being controlling?
Okay.
Because the way that you craft that boundary needs to take into account why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay. So some sort of childhood trauma that led them to feel out of control,
Okay.
that they now try and control all their environmental factors around them out of protection.
Okay. So they're afraid.
Sure.
They're fearful, right? That if they lose control, then they will not be able to either stand it or
protect.
or whatever it
Yep.
is. Yeah. So then that's very helpful, because you can craft that response from an empathic standpoint with your client, right? Or your friend or whoever you're talking to.
Sure.
Like you can say like, okay, so your mom or your dad is afraid that if they lose control, they're going to lose their safety. Let's just say that. All right.
Okay.
So then if I'm going to craft a boundary with them, I need to address what it is about my behavior as a son or a daughter is triggering that fear and that safety response in them. That makes sense?
Yeah. But I mean, what if it's like, they're living in another city, and so the parent can no longer actually protect or do anything to support their child? They are out of control by definition in all measures. There's nothing you can do to remedy that. So how do you, in the few times that you then see that person again, and they come back to like, I'm here, let's meet here, and they start controlling.
We know at that point, right, it is illogical for them to have the emotional response that they're having.
Okay.
From the parent, right?
Yep.
Because kids move away.
Mhm.
That's why we raise them.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
I tell my children, Ben, you're moving out of my house. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
You will not play video games the rest of your life in my basement. Yeah.
You're getting in there early on that one.
Well, I think this plays in exactly what the first point of the blog was: understanding your parents' dysfunction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you could even say, maybe there's a fear of abandonment or loneliness or grief. And so one way to set the boundary is to reassure them that, hey, this is a lot of time we have. We still love you. I mean, you can still do it. This is the pastor coming out.
Sure.
We care for you. We love you. And the believers have a hard time setting boundaries because they think it's mean.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
We just tell them all the time, a boundary is just a boundary. It's not being mean. It's just setting some parameters to keep health within the relationship.
Yeah. Well, and you can address this as a pastor too, because a lot of my clients feel like they're being dishonoring to their parents if they set a boundary.
Right. And
right. Which is the fifth commandment.
Yes. And it's because that's what they've been taught,
Mm-hmm.
Because, a lot of times in cases of toxic faith, let's go back I'm not trying to steer this way, but the 3 rules of dysfunctional families: don't trust, don't talk, don't feel.
Mm.
You know,
What was the first one? Don't trust.
don't trust, don't talk, don't feel. And so people play specific roles in these dysfunctional families. You know, family hero, scapegoat, the family clown, the lost child. You see all those things like that. And so especially it's a family hero that moves out of town. I mean, you know, and so to control means to keep people from talking about the family or you know, not feeling. So so there's so many things and so many variables in that. But yeah, I think the empathetic response is always, as a believer, hey, we love you. We're not trying to be mean. We're just trying to create space for us too. Because the Bible does teach leave and cleave.
It does. It does. Yeah.
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 Lindsay and my Lindsay, got in a disagreement about that statement.
It's a regrettable incident.
It was
you can
funny.
say fight. It's okay.
Well, it wasn't it wasn't a fight. It was a
Doug, let's be honest with our feelings.
difference. I am. This was more funny than anything, and it's my scientific background clashing with the biblical background of her, because leave and cleave in
Cellular biology.
in cellular biology, cleave
How
has
did I know that's what you're going
it
to
has
say?
literally the opposite meaning. Like you
Oh.
cleave things together.
Yeah. No, you know what?
Yeah.
There was a long time as a believer that verse confused me because of that very thing that you just said.
Yeah.
Until a friend of mine was like, no, like cleave, like a cleaver, like ka-tung.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, oh.
See, what was funny was we went for like a long time. I don't remember how long, but maybe a year or something. And we kept saying leave and cleave. And we were both in agreement, but for completely different reasons, because to me, she was leaving her family and cleaving to me. And I finally said that. You're
That's what I
leaving
thought
and
too.
cleaving.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I'm leaving and cleaving away from my parents. I'm like, no, you're cleaving towards me. Anyway, it was a funny.
I'm
glad you brought that one up.
get
That's
that.
a good one.
I do too.
I resonate with that.
I
Yeah.
do too.
I thought that for a long time.
Yeah, anyway. Okay. So I think then, to go back to my example, and we don't need to spend all the time on that one, but I think then it goes to your third point, right? Which is where you set those, you empathize with them or sympathize.
Yeah, so let's
To the
reset
degree
the
that you
scene.
can.
You have a parent who is afraid, right, for their own reasons, through their own history, their own past,
Yep.
of losing control.
Yeah.
And so now we can empathize with them. And like Francis said, we can craft a response. It's like, hey, mom, hey, dad, you don't have to be afraid. I love you and I care for you. And even though I am not living in town anymore, that doesn't change. I still care for you and I still love you. And reassuring them of whatever it is, if that's it. If it's something else, it might be something else.
Sure. And then you set the boundaries, right? Because you don't want, when you come to visit, that you're under their thumb, because they're like,
Correct.
I have you back for a week and you will do everything that I say. Meet me at Jack Stack.
And what's interesting about that is they don't feel like they're doing that.
No, they don't.
Because
Like they don't
don't
recognize
no,
it.
because
No, they don't.
that's probably how they parented.
Oh,
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
That's a good point.
Yeah, which comes with its own set of issues, right?
Yeah.
Like that works when, when I've got a infant to 10-year-old.
Correct.
But as soon as we get into that preteen, teenage phase, if I don't, as a parent, if I don't phase out of that and give some free rein to my preteen and teenager to
Right.
say I don't really want to go to McDonald's today, Dad.
Yeah.
then-
Autonomy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, look, good word there.
But it's pretty interesting though, because when you see a lot of familiar conflict, it's when kids get older, because parents are used to having this high control, and then it's independence versus interdependence, independence versus
Yeah.
independence, and so
Yeah,
then
that's
people
right.
start.
Mm.
And man, I don't know, when you couple counsels before they get married, I always tell them just get ready for some weird stuff to happen, especially with the mamas.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, though, there's hope in that we can, as parents, and we can as parents do this ourselves. We can also teach other people to do this, that you are coaching and teaching that interdependence
Yes.
as the years go on, so that when they do go to college, they're not completely lost,
Yeah.
right? And just out there, either going crazy, like
Right.
rebellious crazy,
Yeah.
or like crying, calling home every night crying because they're like, I don't know what to do with my life,
Sure.
that kind of thing. You don't want either of those things to happen. You want them to call every now and then and have a good conversation, that kind of thing.
Okay, so then let's say, given that same scenario, we've gone through those steps, we've empathized with them, and discussed it with them, and then set up boundaries, from that same position of love, of like, hey, when I come back in town, like I have my own schedule. We can try and coordinate. Let's work it out, whatever. But like, I'm not gonna be able to jump when you say you call me 5 minutes and I'm outside of your house. Like
so
that sort of a thing.
It depends on the personality of the parent.
No, of course.
Okay.
But so I'm moving to past that. So let's assume we've done everything we can from our personal perspective.
Okay.
And
then
at some point, if that's still not working or it's causing tension or whatever, then the appropriate response is to rest from them, right? Which is your third point. Is that accurate?
Yes, you can rest. You can give yourself some clarity. So, and one of the things that I say in that third point is, if you've never been involved in an extremely dysfunctional family, this is going to be hard for you to grasp. So, it is chaotic, extremely chaotic. Yeah, so much so that it can be constricting. That sometimes, like if you feel yourself needing to get out of it, like you're trapped, you might even have like a panic set in. It is okay to come up to the surface and get some air so that you can breathe and you can clear your mind and you can think about what your next steps are going to be.
Sure. And process through that. So what does that look like practically? Like just taking a vacation of your own, walking away?
So with parents, and I want to be clear, because it's different from like if this is a spouse or if this is a parent or if it's a child.
Yeah.
With parents, so you are dealing with your parents, you can say, hey mom, hey dad, I just need a few weeks without any communication. I'm going to go to counseling. I'm going to talk to my counselor. I just need to clear my head and I just need some space. And that's totally okay. Yeah.
This is just crazy because so the previous example I was talking about wasn't me, like for real.
Yeah.
But what you saying this now makes me think of this issue that I had with my dad right when we were like getting married.
Okay.
And I'll spare the details, but there were some weird financial things happening and it was a really turbulent time in his life. And I knew that. But Lindsay was relatively new and there was a whole bunch of like miscommunications and all this stuff. And then craziness happened, as you said, Francis. And, I had to like take a time out and it was not easy and it was really tough. Because it was probably the biblical cleaving that was happening. And I was kind of doing that from my parents.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being this conflict of like, well, we had always had this kind of back and forth with finances since I've been in high school for the most part. And so then it was really jarring because I never really said I'm done with that, And so that same kind of thing happened, but it had rippling effects downstream. Like, we ran out of money on our honeymoon, like from one of our credit cards. And luckily I had a backup, but like only one backup,
It's stressful.
and like, and we're, out of country and all this stuff. And so it was just this like, dude, I need a break. Like I need a break and we need to reevaluate all these arrangements that we just haven't ever talked about,
right?
Type of a thing. But yeah, that was a really stressful period for a lot of reasons. But
It's not easy, man.
it's interesting to see that kind of written out of like, it's okay to walk away for a bit.
Yeah.
Because I feel like trash. And
Yeah.
like you're supposed to honor and love your parents and talk to them all the time and be super close. And like I haven't really ever had that. And so it's, like everything just seemed so foreign. And then to just walk away, it was like, all right, well, what am I doing now? What's the next thing? So luckily my dad, like a good father, continued to reach out and wouldn't let me just fully walk away, and we healed things.
Wonderful. That's great.
So it was great. But
Yeah.
it was a interesting growth period, I guess.
Amen.
So it can work, guys. Anyone listening?
It can. Absolutely.
So these steps are tried and true, I guess, once I understand them.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that because, when you're in the middle of that dysfunction, three things can happen, right, Cary? You can have an emotional cutoff where I'm out.
Yeah.
Or you can get so enmeshed in the situation that you get sick.
Mm-hmm.
Like my friend Dr. Corley and I say, don't let sick people make you sick,
Yeah, that's good.
Or you can get healthy. But sometimes you really can't get healthy till you can have that stepping back.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what I had to do was I had to be out, and I was, because I'm very logically driven. I'm an emotional creature for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm logically driven, so I can just cut it off.
That scientist is getting into his feels tonight. I'll tell you what.
I'm a true Gemini, you guys. I don't know if you want to go into astrology.
Not at all. No.
Gemini, the description for Gemini is more appropriate to me than any of those personality tests have ever been.
Really?
I have two personalities.
Well, we
up
just
in here.
lost all our Christian followers.
That's it. Yeah. Call me for a healing.
There's some tarot cards.
Is that a crystal around your neck?
So
Anyway.
I do want to focus a little bit on that because there's quite a few clients that I work with that they feel bad. They feel like they're dishonoring their parents, which going back to scripture, then they're like, wow, I'm a bad Christian, for dishonoring my parents in this way. And the truth is that that's not the case. You're not a bad Christian. It's okay to gain some space. And then just go ahead and expect that if you're going to do that, there's also going to be some people that don't understand. And they are going to come around and they might say like, you're being very disrespectful to your parent,
Yeah.
Or if you happen to like get away by like getting away. So for instance, for me, one of the ways that I cleared my head from dysfunctional family system was to get out of country. I went away for 6
you went
months.
to the Bahamas.
And one of the things, like from beginning to end of that I found myself answering the question of, what are you running away from, Cary? And at first it frustrated me. And then it just made me sad that people kind of didn't see my intent in it. But my answer to them was this, is like, I'm not running away from anything. I'm running to something. And then I'm kind of a nerd at heart. And one of my favorite quotes, going back to Lord of the Rings, is talking about the return of the king, essentially. But one of the
I've
songs,
seen the movie.
Oh, you've seen the movie? Well, one of the
it.
poems. So this is just in the book. It's not in the movie.
Oh, okay.
One of the poems that is written about the king who will return to the throne is that not all that shimmers is gold, and not all those who wander are lost. And wonder, I know my southern accent, it's wander, W-A-N-D-E-R, not W-O-N. So not all those who wander are lost. And that's true. Some people just need to get away to clear their heads, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. And don't buy into the lie that you're running from something if the truth is you're actually running to health. You're running to something. You're running to something that's better. You're running to find truth. God doesn't punish people. Just going back to James 1:2-5. God does not punish people for seeking truth. If you're seeking wisdom, he's not going to rebuke you for that. That's foolish.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I became a Christian, is because I heard a pastor just flat out say, like, God's not scared by your questions.
Amen.
Like,
Amen.
And I was like, oh, The scientist in me likes that.
Yes.
I've got a notebook here. Let's start.
So what do you mean by that, Doug? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, I just want to thank you guys for joining me on this conversation. I think is much needed and is actually going to continue. So we've got some episodes coming up where we're going to continue this talk about what to do with dysfunctional spouse and then also dysfunctional kids. So you guys tune in for our next episodes, and we would love to have you. If you have any questions, feel free. I've got a new email. Oh my gosh, I got to pull this up here. I've got a new email to give you guys. It's actually feedback@relaxedandfree.com. Feedback@relaxedandfree.com. You can send us questions. You can send us prayer requests. You can send us any kind of feedback you want. We'd love to hear it. And obviously, we'd love for you to go online and give us some reviews and give us some stars or lip.
Yeah, Apple
service.
Podcasts. Apple Podcasts is one of the most powerful. So if
It
you're
is,
listening on Apple, rate and review there.
Yeah.
Spotify as well.
Yeah.
So
all of those things.
Anywhere,
check
wherever
all those
you
boxes.
get it.
Leave comments. I love comments.
Hey,
Leave comments.
and we're posting these as videos on YouTube as well.
Oh yeah, we are. Yeah, that's
on the
right.
Lakewood Family Therapy YouTube channel.
YouTube channel.
So
Yeah,
we'll
I forgot
link to
about
that.
Thanks
in
for
the-
mentioning it. Yeah. So we'd appreciate you guys doing that. And until then, rejoice in hope, endure in suffering, and persist in prayer. Much love to y'all. At Lakewood Family Therapy, we aim to be your refuge in the storm. We're professional Christian counselors whose sole purpose is to bring healing to your family and hope for the future. If you'd like a free 15-minute phone consultation with one of our professional counselors, you can call or text 816-663-9751 or head on over to our website, lwfamilytherapy.com. We'd love to hear from you. Lakewood Family Therapy, where faith, family, and future is our number one priority.
Relaxed and Free is a presentation of Lakewood Family Therapy. Catch up on other episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and please rate and review. Every review honestly helps us bring you this content. Production and engineering led by Doug Bonebrake. Recording done by Chris Renfro. Stay relaxed and free.
Let's not waste time, we'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth. You and I as one will always be better than two. Yeah, you and I as one will always be better than